no country ever, anywhere in the world, even the most Islamist or most Christian, have demanded or asked other nations to be recognized by its religious orientation. This is just a fact. We say Iran is a Muslim state because it has a majority of Muslims. We say Turkey is a Muslim state because it has an overwhelming majority of Muslims. Israel is a Jewish state because to this point it has overwhelming majority of Jews living in Israel. The only way Israel can remain a Jewish state if it maintains its Jewish majority. That's one prerequisite. The concern and the whole idea why, for example, of all people, Ariel Sharon, when he was a prime minister, decided unilaterally to withdraw from Gaza, and the plan of Kadima was also to continue the withdrawal from the West Bank as well, was precisely because the then Likud party, subsequently the Kadima party, came to the conclusion, I should say, that if the status quo is maintained and there is no resolution based on a two-state solution, the one-state solution will become far more prominent, and the consequences of that, the Palestinian will have an almost instant majority. That is, if Israel today is to incorporate all of the West Bank and Gaza into its own proper and make a single state, if it's going to remain democratic, then the Palestinian will have basically an absolute majority if they are combined with the Israeli Palestinians who are living in Israel, about 1,000,004. So that was the principal reason why Sharon at the time decided we have to withdraw from Gaza, we have to withdraw from the West Bank, short of some 4 or 5%, in order to maintain the integrity of the Jewish state, of Israel as a Jewish state. So whereas you can create conditions by demographic means to maintain the character of the state, you cannot simply go to outside and demand, you recognize me as such. Let me give you a hypothetical example why this is not done and won't work. Suppose, and this is probably what Lieberman has in mind, and why Lieberman doesn't think that a two-state solution, the way we've been talking about it all along, is workable. Because he thinks that the Palestinian minority today in Israel could conceivably become a majority in about 100 years. Some demographer sat down to figure out birth rate, potential immigration, etc., and concluded that it is conceivable that within 100 years Israel could become a binational state, only because there's already the existing Jewish Palestinian community within Israel itself today. So if you want to speculate in this regard, then your argument will have theoretical credence, namely, you have to recognize me as a Jewish state. But then again, suppose the Palestinians become almost equal in numbers to the Jews. What then Israel will do? Let's go with the Lieberman theory for a moment. Israel will have to choose between democracy, democratic form of government, or other form of government which may border apartheid, for that matter, or anything like of this sort, in order to maintain by artificial means the governing authority in the hands of the Jews. These are serious problems for Israel and for the Jews as such. As we as Jews, many of us, we are liberal in our thinking, in our approach. And believe it or not, Jews living outside Israel, by and large, are even more conservative, more orthodox than many of the Jews living in Israel itself. But this is a major dilemma. So you have to go back to the principle. Israel was created for the Jews, specifically following millennium. of persecution, of expulsion, culminating with the Holocaust. And finally, the world came also to recognize in the early 1900s that the time has come for this little minority, before it is completely exterminated, to have its own home. And at the time, they discussed all kinds of possibilities. Uganda was one, Brazil was another, somewhere in the United States was another, but none of this worked because the Jews have maintained such unique affinity to that particular land, the land of Israel. Affinity not because of religion per se, religion certainly is a big part of it, but because of historic connection as well. There was a Jewish state in that part of the world. In fact, two states. Yehuda and Israel, there were two states that existed side by side for many years. So there is only historic connection, there is a religious affinity, there is a culture, and all of that put together. So now there is a Jewish state, or there is Israel today, and the Israelis, for good reason, are struggling with this dilemma. That is, how and by what means they can maintain the Jewishness of the state for the indefinite period of time, not just even 10, 20, or 30 years, for thousands of years. Is it doable? I don't know if it's going to be doable in 200 or 300 years. I don't think anybody sitting in this audience can gauge and say, well, this is what's going to happen in 200 years. What we need to do today is, however, is to make sure that whatever we do, that is as Israelis, the Israelis need to do, is to make sure that there is sustainable Jewish majority, encourage immigration, encourage greater birth rate for that matter. And mind you, early on, families with more children used to be rewarded with subsidies by the government. I think these subsidies are no longer exist, but they used to be. Because then, when Israel when it was initially created, this was an issue. They've been already thinking about that. How to increase the Jewish population so that to ensure that the Jewish nature of the state will not be obscured or overwhelmed by other minorities that may be living in Israel. So therefore, what we're saying today, why I, like many others, support a two-state solution, because for the foreseeable future being the next 20, 30, 50 years, we can possibly project that far. I'm not prepared to project what will happen more than 50 years from today, because I don't know. But as far as we can project, we need to create this condition, the circumstances whereby Israel can sustain that Jewish majority through democratic means, not through racist activities, illegal activities, apartheid, or anything of the sort. Because this is the very nature of Jews as being liberal, who fought for centuries for freedom, not just for themselves, but for everybody else for that matter. I mean, the Jewish community in the United States was in the forefront of the civil rights movement. I cannot imagine Jews going the other way.